So, Benny, what music have you been listening to lately?
God, so much. Okay, I gotta put some respect on Amy Allen's name. She's a Berkeley graduate, just wrote both Espresso and Please, Please, Please for Sabrina Carpenter. She's an incredible songwriter. She studied under Pat Pattison, who taught like John Mayer, uh, Charlie Puth, Megan Trainor, like, pretty much any songwriter that's gone through Berkeley. But God, Please, 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 Wiley has been stuck in my head. I'm telling you, like, it's so good. It's crazy for a pop song to hear a key change in like a pop song, a major pop song. So refreshing. Such a well crafted song. Um, but yeah, it's been stuck in my head, dude. Like, aside from like what I need to listen to, that's been that's been like a steady repeat for me.
Think of having
How
a
about
track
yourself?
record. Thinking about having a track record of writing two massive songs back to back. Like, that's
Yeah, dude.
insane.
They're sat at the top of the global charts right now at one and two. Sabrina Carpenter's Espresso is number one, and Please 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 is at number two. Global. That's crazy.
All I have to say is at least someone's taking over Taylor Swift's spot. We cannot leave that spot super cold for someone else to take. I've been listening to a lot. We're recording this on a Saturday, so New Music Friday was yesterday, and so much music dropped. I'm kind of burnt out on music today because all I did yesterday was listen to hours upon hours upon hours of music, and I found a couple good tracks, but I found myself repeating to go to the artist Lemon Twigs. Their album that came out in 2023, Everything Harmony, is honestly a incredible album. I I stumble to say masterpiece because I don't like to throw that word out there because there are some songs that I don't really care for, but I can find myself kind of going back for. Um, but it is that album's something else, man. It's so good. Welcome back to an episode of the Fresh Record Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Wiley Todd, and of course, joined again by my co-host, Mr. Benny Camilla. How you doing, Benny?
Doing great. Ready to talk some music. I'm burnt out, honestly. So it's finals week. It's finals week, dude. I'm just melting.
It's
My
done
brain's
tomorrow,
fried.
though. It's done tomorrow.
Better be done tomorrow.
Unless there's like a
I gotta
surprise
get.
assignment.
Oh,
I I I was like, you know what? I'm grinding this shit out. And I was like, last weekend was gonna be my last weekend of work. So that has been the case. But it's also like not as been easy either with it waiting, anticipating the grades, because that's the most important thing when it comes down to it. I got one of my grades on my capstone actually. I got that in. Got an A on that bad boy. So I'm getting an A in that
nice,
class. Now just waiting on
nice.
dance.
Congrats.
Dance. I
You
hate this
can
class.
have you finished your dances?
Oh
Are they all recorded?
no, I only had to do those like in week like 1, 2, and like 4, I think. It was weird. It was the paper, but so just waiting for that paper grade. But we got a lot to cover, everyone, guys. There's a lot of things that have happened. We're even omitting some things because of how everything is laid out and everything's coming out. There's so much news, so much music. We have
Mm-hmm.
to narrow it down, even to a point, as you guys can see behind me. My most excited album to talk about this week is BRAT, and we're going to be covering that. We're going to be covering also the Normani album that came out last week as well. And then this week's releases with Gracie Abrams and Kehlani's new albums dropping as well. And our main topic for today, which I think we'll start off with, is Taylor Swift sabotaging the charts? So let's start with this, Benny, and I'm going to give a little
Let's
like
do it.
groundwork here from what I know of the knowledge from this situation. So going back to the Charli album dropping, critically praised. I'm not talking about my opinion or Benny opinion here. We're just talking facts here. Critically plays, people were loving it, people were playing it all over the place. Massive success. So it kind of got word, I guess from either people in the industry, fans, that this album was going to do well in the charts, that it could be number one even. But Taylor Swift was already in that spot. So literally like the day before or the day of the Charli record dropping, Taylor Swift decided to put exclusively UK records re-releases with like demos, voice memos exclusively for the UK because that's where the Charli album was rumored to be doing number one. So people are saying that Taylor Swift sabotaged the charts by putting these releases out to keep Charli from getting there. But there has also been word that she's done this quite a few times, even when the Billie Eilish record that we already covered on the podcast, there was rumors that she did that too. So I'll toss it off to you, Benny. What is your knowledge and thoughts on this?
So I do know that the album peaked at number 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the second album is that's like preventing
I think it's
Charlie's
Billy.
album from.
I think it's Billy if I'm not wrong.
Okay. So, with that being said, it wouldn't have charted, I guess, at number 1 either way,
Yeah.
which is it would have been number 2 because if Taylor wasn't there, Billy would have been on top. Is Taylor Swift sabotaging? We don't know what's going on with the marketing side of her releases. I think Taylor Swift does have a very strong hand in how things get put out. I don't think there's a team that's like telling Taylor what to do, like how typically, traditional labels have their teams that typically know better, and there's like a true and tried science to, market releases. Whereas you have someone like Taylor Swift who, no matter what she does, it's going to be wildly successful. And once you get to that point, everyone kind of just bows down to you, like even within your professional circle. So, was this always planned? It's possible. Did Taylor see that Charli was releasing something and was afraid, or even Billy, and was afraid that she was going to lose her number 1 spot and wanted to stay on top to like keep on cementing herself as like a record breaker and at the very forefront of the music industry? That's possible, right? There's no way to know. There's no way to know for sure. At the end of the day, numbers don't matter in terms like music is subjective in the way that it makes people feel and how people connect with it. There's no right or wrong, so it's nice to get that recognition for your hard work and but at the end of the day, it's how it's received culturally, like you know so I think Charlie's album is doing very well. I'm excited to talk about it because um there's a really like short history of the hyperpop genre, and the producer that produced Charlie's album, who you know I don't want to say like he's responsible for the album, but like he is the main producer. Charlie only co-produced 2 songs and he kind of produced everything else, and it's a production based album. He and we'll get to his name later. This specific individual is coined with developing the hyperpop genre. He's been such a huge, yeah, or he's contributed so much to its conception and its development. He's worked with other artists like Sophie, and Sophie is also coined as like one of the most influential people and like kind of like one of the artists that were at the very genesis of hyperpop and kind of putting it into the popular music landscape. Um, so yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, it's not like a mainstream pop album. This isn't for everyone. Charlie's new album, right? Um, it's a lot of people would, like that aren't into that kind of music would be like, oh, this is a lot of noise. There's a lot of it might sound the same to some people. You know what I mean? But with that being said, it's dominating the dance charts. It's dominating the niche that it's in, and I think it's a really clever mix of like house music and hyperpop, and I think it's kind of paving the way to bringing hyperpop across the Atlantic because it's more popular in the UK. It's very much a British genre in its conception and how it's been received. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes, and um, I think she's getting the recognition she deserves where it matters.
I would have to disagree that the charts don't matter because with any business, and as someone that is dedicated to the film industry and knows a shit ton about it, and I'll admit, I know more about the film industry than the music industry. But when it comes down to it, these big studio heads, labels, they care about one thing and one thing only, and that is, of course, money.
Well,
So,
yeah, but the money that's coming in
uh-huh.
isn't changing. It's gonna like Charlie's album's gonna make the same money regardless. It's just charts are kind of just like placeholders, and there's like an oversaturation of music at the moment. Um, so like she's still like even if she was number one, it's not going to affect her in any way other than just getting that recognition. Like it's up there. It's literally in the top three albums in the world. Like
Well,
there's no like she's at the top. It's
I have to disagree with you here because with any industry, when something's at the top, it's more recognizable. It has more of a brand to itself, you know. With albums, in a sense, they're like movies. You know, artists are like directors. They are creating a project that it's by itself is selling the product as the album, you know. Same with singles, same with anything. So therefore, they could put single records out. They can put a record out. They can do different variants, merch, posters, whatever. So when something's a more recognizable brand, the normal audience, which are not music fans like us, or probably anyone watching this, or the normies, or like the suburban moms, or the working class dads and stuff like that, you know, they don't really pay attention to any stuff like this. So when something's number one, which means that they can put more into the marketing plan of merch and vinyl releases and things like that, they're more likely to buy it when they recognize it. And so therefore I think that's when it changes. Not yes, not monetarily from the charts, but by recognition from the charts, it gains more monetarily. That's what I'm saying
yeah,
here. Um
definitely.
yeah.
I totally agree with that. But I think like it is a number one album. It might not be like number one in the world because Tortured Poets Department's there and so is Billy
Mhm.
number two. But like being that she's number three currently and also she's at number one on the dance charts, like um I think and also like Taylor Swift's album might be number one, but the singles aren't. Like it's just the album as a whole in
Fortnite
terms of
was
like
for a very long time. Fortnite was
yeah, but I think
a
it's
single.
like it's kind of came
And
down. That's the one with Post, right?
yeah, that might still be in the
Yeah.
top 10, but it definitely has come because Sabrina took over on that. So, but I want to get back to the Taylor Swift conversation. That's what we're here for. Um, so, like you said, that there is a team behind her, but one of the biggest things that was made out throughout the years is Taylor Swift is going to be the head of what everything is done. Like she wants to be number one honcho on everything that goes out for her brand, her name, and stuff like that. Mad respect. But I'm sure she has people that help her that she respect and stuff like that. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, she's taking over," blah blah blah. And like, yes, a lot of people don't think the album's great, and we've already discussed what we thought about. We thought it was okay. Both of us, we thought it was okay. But you know, she's number one, regardless of what anyone says. She is top dog. So even though she has that spot and something gets recognition, like a Charli, you know, where Charli comes out, puts in the record of her career, and I will say that you can quote me on that, the record of her career, and knocks out the park, makes basically a perfect album. To have that word get out there and to scare Taylor Swift, which I don't think is the case. You know, I feel like this move, if she was doing deliberately, would have had to come from a scared place. And I don't think nothing really muchly scares Taylor Swift. Like, come on. Like, she's selling out stadiums and the Eras tour. Like, you can't get bigger than that. You just can't. So all this hate coming to Taylor Swift just because you don't like the music and you think the Charli album is better, like I do, I don't think it was a deliberate move to basically knock her out of the placement because, like you said, that Charlie's probably never going to get that number one. She landed at number 3. Billie was still ahead of her. So, like, I guess this just comes from anger, the passion from the fans of the Charli fans, which is a pretty big fan base.
And I understand your passion towards it too. Like
Yeah,
you've been preaching this album.
yeah, I got something to say.
Your Discord icon is the Brat album.
Yeah,
But it says Wiley instead of Brat. You want to throw it up here?
like, yeah, I'll definitely talk about it because I'm very excited to talk about it. But the thing is a lot of people are coming out to Taylor Swift for this, and I can understand, like, with anything, you know, even myself, I'm very a passionate person when it comes to things that I love, and I'm very caring towards it, and I will go to war for it, basically. And usually when I'm seeing something I don't like so much in my face, it angers me, and I start like oh, this pisses me off, and it builds up. I understand that comes from a passionate standpoint. I definitely understand. And I think that's where people are with Taylor Swift right now. That's why people are saying that she's sabotaging the BRAT record. Because when you look at the facts, this thing was coming out and people were saying it was going to be number 1, but it didn't really have a shot at number 1. It had a shot at 2, but like, like there was no chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think Taylor Swift, like, notoriously has gotten shit throughout her entire career, like, continuously. There's never been a moment where people aren't trashing Taylor. And that was something that we spoke about in our Taylor deep dive. If you guys want to go and check that out, if you're listening now. But a lot of people, like, love the album too, the Torture Poets Department.
Well, it's
Like,
number
there's
1. You can't deny the fact, you know?
yeah, it's and then I, like, earlier you said that, like, you said we both thought it was an okay album. I actually think, and I said it in the Taylor deep dive too, I actually think it's one of her better works. I think, like, there's just so much depth to it, especially as within her songwriting. It might not be for everyone, just like how Charlie's album might not be for everyone. But there are people that love it, and that goes both ways. So I don't know. I think like, is Taylor deliberately, like, did she see that Charli was releasing an album, or saw that Billie was, dominating the charts and was like, I'm gonna nudge my way back in here? It's possible. I don't know. I think Taylor Swift, like, me and Wiley and I, we studied marketing, right? So, like, at Berklee College of Music, which is the forefront of any music business program, or it's at the forefront of all music business programs in the industry. So in our marketing classes, we're taught that these marketing plans are developed 6 months out. Like, you're making a marketing plan that's literally, like, going to be like with months of time before you even start doing it. So it's really possible that this marketing plan was crafted, and it's just so happened that, they were released around the same time, and
Well, also, like, look, like you just said, these are vinyls that are getting released. Those have to go into production, not the physical vinyl, the sleeve, the outer sleeves, the plasticking, stickers on it. Those have to go into production.
Doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, she is doing her UK tour right now.
There you go.
So, like, it comes down to poorly timing. But at the same time, even if you say that, this was planned 6 months before. Like, if we have to go back and look, we got to look
but
back.
Also, it might not be. It might not be 6 months before. Like, like with someone like Taylor Swift, like these big names, things can change the scope of how choices and decisions are made.
She's probably like, who she has on her team probably is prioritizing, like, her records. Let's say, like, the Maria's album is in production, and she's like, oh, I'm Taylor Swift, I'm going to put my record in production now. Could probably happen because of her level and status. Like, that's the thing. That's how the world, when it comes down to everything, you can have the most talent in the world. It comes down to money. That is the most important thing in the industry, any industry, whatever you say is negated because of
Yeah.
money.
Also, something that I like to add, just to like bring another point to Taylor, or maybe this might be against her, but um at the Grammys this year when she won what was it, album of the year?
Yeah, and then like I think pop song of the
She
year as well.
so that's when she announced the Tortured Poets Department when she won her Grammy.
Yeah.
Um and the thing is, like, artists who are developing their careers, like let's just say this was like Olivia Rodrigo's first Grammys or whatever, and she won this. She wouldn't have been able to be like, "Oh, I'm releasing a new album. I'm posting it right now."
Yeah.
Taylor was able to do that because she is the business. Like she is. Like she can do whatever the hell she wants, and
Yeah.
everyone around her needs to agree and do what she wants. So
Let me ask
she
you
does have
this.
the power. She does have the power though
Yeah.
to like she could. It's a possibility.
I
That's
want
what
to
I'm saying, but I don't know.
I want to
Yeah,
ask you a hypothetical. Okay?
I love hypotheticals.
Let's say okay, this would never happen. Let's just say the
Yeah.
Maria's album, the song from
Okay.
that guy I showed you last week. Let's say that's at number 1, okay? And
Okay.
Charlie's album is about to come out, and the Maria's right before the release adds exclusive things to come out. Would the Maria's get as much as shit as Taylor Swift? I don't think so.
No,
Yeah.
because I think like visibility really contributes
Yeah.
to getting like any lash or like kickback or so like someone like Taylor Swift who has every single pair of eyes on this planet, human eyes on this planet looking at her. um you know, she's gonna be under fire.
Mhm.
It's just the more there is, the more of a varied pool of opinions there's going to be. So
Yeah.
like when you have a band like the Marias, the scope's going to be lower, and also they're not being displayed to people that aren't like fans of them. Like they're people are going to the Marias because they like their music. They're not, you know,
They don't
at
have
the
a
top of
brand.
radio.
They don't have a
Yeah.
brand to them. Yeah.
Oh, well, they have a brand, right?
But
But they
yeah,
don't
but
have
like
like
the individual
the
people's part of the bands don't have a brand. You know, like they don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They don't have like a celebrity
Yeah.
identity.
They
So
don't know the
with that,
individual
yeah,
members of the Marias. They just know the
exactly.
Marias, you know. And Taylor
Yeah,
Swift, you know Taylor Swift, you know. So it's like
exactly.
more approachability, I would say, to a general audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely they wouldn't get
Mm.
shit. I think most people would be like, "Oh, the Marias, who's this?"
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you know what I mean? So,
It would come from
definitely.
curiosity more than anything. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was a fun hypothetical. All right, so we're gonna move
Yeah.
on. But before we get to our album reviews, I wanted to mention one thing. So Katy Perry just announced this week that she is releasing a new album, and we got a snippet of one of her songs. And man, is this getting heat on the internet. Like a lot of people are
Yeah.
hating it.
Sexy, confident.
It's really weird. People are calling it
Oh,
robotic.
people are loving it too.
I haven't seen people
It's a
loving it.
Oh, I've seen people like it's crazy. It's the most Katy Perry's currently the most like spoken about artist on the Threads platform. She's gotten more likes on Threads, like the new Twitter, like Instagram's
Yeah.
Twitter, than any other female artist. And people like so like what I think is really particularly interesting about Katy Perry is that she hasn't released music in like 6 or 7 years,
Yeah.
and she has over 50 something million monthly listeners. She's an absolute global superstar
Yeah.
powerhouse. Um and she's like the like 17th most listened to artist in the world, I think.
Yeah.
And that's someone who hasn't released music in 7 years.
But
So like,
here's the thing
you
that's
know,
interesting to
but
me though. Like the route of the music she's approaching now, because this is different than her last music. Like this is even the snippet that we got. But a lot of people are doing this. You know, we have pop artists going to country, and now we have pop artists also going to electro pop because what we're going to talk about next week, Camila Cabello is dropping an electro pop album. We heard the single this week and it's bad. I don't like it at all. But I guess that's what the approach we're going to get for her new album. So like a lot of people are going this way and she's going this way. Like even if you look at the cover or the snippet that we got, looks like Beyonce's Renaissance. A little bit. Like it's kind of not exactly similar, but there's similarities to it. And guess what that album was? That was a dance pop album that Beyonce did. So everyone's taking these turns. She's doing this turn. Like, you know, when you take that long of a break, you got to come back and say something with power, you know? And I've noticed in recent years, actually, that this, like the artists that are making music and putting out singles to their albums sometimes are some of the weakest tracks to put out when I'm listening to an album overall. I've been noticing that a lot recently with, especially like with actually some of the albums that we're going to be covering today. It was very much the case with,
So just to add on to that, so like you mentioned how like this song is so different from what we've heard, and it is. But something to note is a reason why she's getting hate from like certain people is that the album is produced by like a lifelong collaborator of hers, Dr. Luke, who infamously do you know
never heard of this
him?
person.
Okay. So do you remember when Kesha like basically outed a producer for sexual harassment throughout her career?
I do not remember this.
He worked on like TikTok or whatever, and that first initial breakout album of hers. Um, so the song "Praying" is about him and like her getting through the abuse that she endured. So Dr. Luke is the name of the producer, and he's kind of been like ostracized in the music industry because of allegations that have come out against him. Um, but with that being said, I don't think any of the allegations were actually proven. Uh, and I don't think he was ever found guilty, which that doesn't mean that he's not. Um, but you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. Like, I, if you're not found guilty, you could still do something. It's just that's just how the world works. So I don't know the reality. But with that being said, a lot of people are hating on Katy Perry because Dr. Luke produced the album. But Dr. Luke is responsible for all of Katy Perry's like mega hits. So even though what we're hearing now is so foreign to what you would expect from like Katy Perry, especially based off her last releases, um, there is like we need to stress that Dr. Luke is producing the album, who crafted Katie's earlier years, where that kind of like cemented her as like one of the world's biggest pop stars, you know, modern and like the modern pop music landscape. So, yeah, this is definitely one of the most highly anticipated albums worldwide. Katy Perry's huge. Like, I don't even think I realized how big Katy Perry was until this album was released. Just seeing how much traction it's getting, the entire world is freaking out. Like, it's the most spoken about female-led release by an artist on the Threads platform, which is becoming like, you know, the new Twitter. Basically, everyone's moving over to Threads because no one likes X and like what Elon Musk is doing with it. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what's gonna happen. And like you said, like a lot of artists are going like in that electro pop direction. And I think like based off the album cover that she shared with us, it looks like it's going to be like an electronically based album because it looks so futuristic. Like she's like a woman cyborg or whatever. Like half her body is, you know, like I don't know. She looks like she's like in Mega Man or
Transforming.
something. Yeah, yeah, Transformers or whatever. But
Well, I did
yeah,
not
I'm
know.
I'm really stoked.
I did not know any of that Dr. Luke stuff, but all I know is,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm very extremely based in the movie industry. Like usually when people get accused of this stuff, they never work again. So like the fact that
Yes.
Katy Perry is giving him a platform to continue working is, I don't really like the sound of that personally. So
Yeah, and a lot of people don't, you know, and that's where a lot of the hate is coming from. Like if you after this, if you want to take a look, just like Google it, and you'll see like you can get a better look if you like read up on it or like watch a video of someone who's more knowledgeable on like the intricacies of this whole situation because I'm not one of those people. Um, you'll get a better idea. Uh, but yeah, I just know that the allegations weren't ever proven.
Mhm.
That's just all I know. So like I'm not gonna empathize with an abuser or someone who, sexually assaulted or even raped or forced someone to do something that they're not supposed to do.
Allegedly.
Um, allegedly, you know what I mean? But this is someone who probably is a lifelong, like probably like within her close circle, like a really
Mm.
close friend, and she probably sees him in a different light than most people. Or maybe she knows more or knows something that we don't. Maybe. I'm just saying speculatively speaking. I'm not saying that's the case. So, um, just keeping an open mind to it, and uh, I'm just blown away by Katy Perry's numbers. It's crazy, dude. Like artists we're covering today have a fraction of her monthly listener count, and she hasn't released music in 7 years. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Well, it's like with any
Like,
like deceased artist, like Michael Jackson probably still has numbers, and then it's crazy. But
yeah,
yeah,
but like I think that's like a testament to just how
yeah,
wildly successful she is.
mm,
But at the same time, um, she isn't Michael Jackson.
yeah.
And I think a lot of like what's gone on the last 7 years, what prevented her from uh releasing music, what was that?
American
American
Idol.
Idol. Because she was on American Idol. She was a judge for when they started on ABC from season 1 up until this past season. Just it's done. She's done. She's not going back. Or maybe she will in the future, who knows. But she's done with Idol, and I think she like really invested herself into that. And developing relationships with the contestants and trying to make them succeed in the industry. One artist of which Katie Turner, we can throw in. Um, I know she has relationships with like I think her name was Lacey K Booth or something like that. Um, Benson Boone, you know, she has a I think she has a good eye for talent, and she was very passionate about the younger kids on the show and bringing them to success. So, um, yeah. But now we're getting Katy Perry back, guys. It's a crazy year for music.
It's
It's been a
insane. It's stacked.
yeah.
Even like, even going through like all through like making my top 10 list. I even started actually doing my favorite singles of the year as well. I made like a playlist. So like at the end of the year, everyone, just so you know, we're gonna be doing our list. So just kind of preparing for that. Um, but speaking of music, let's get into the albums. Um, we're gonna start with Kehlani's new record. Kehlani is an artist. When we were looking for the show and like what we're gonna cover, we stumbled across Kehlani and like, oh, she has big numbers. And I didn't really know Kehlani. Right
Mhm.
before I listened to the new album, actually, I was looking in, and she's had like some decent singles that I've heard before, but that she's been featured on, not individually Kehlani's stuff. So this is like my first time ever listening to Kehlani, and I listened to the album, and I will get into details on what I think about it because uh, I'm not a writer, guys, but I wrote like a whole ass paragraph of what I thought about the album.
Oh,
Um,
let's do it.
and I did individual notes for every single track. But listening to it, it was exhausting. It was exhausting. So my overall thoughts on the album is it's extremely mid, but has some really cool aspects to it. Um, Kalani's vocals are incredible. They are
Yeah, she's a great
beautiful.
vocalist.
Uh, she can really belt and sing her ass off. So that was always noticeable on the album. The second part is that her production was out of this world incredible. Going from like normal production that you would hear on like current rap songs to going to having like some Latin vibes with guitars and like maracas at points and stuff like that. Incredible production that I was just blown away. The way I like to describe it actually is like a kid on Christmas morning, like you get a present, you're opening, oh, what's the next one? Because you're excited to hear what they're going to do with the production. And that's what it felt like. But where it falls short is there is nothing catchy about the album in its choruses or verses. The lyrics do not stand out by any stretch of the imagination. And every one of these songs, I wrote down like, oh, it had a good core, it had like a good vocal, really cool production, but fell short on lyrics. And that's most every track on this album. The track number 8, not like the number 8, the track is called 8. Was a cool twist because I really did like the verse on that track, and the beat was kind of quirky and weird, but I kind of really enjoyed it. That was like definitely a standout to me, but I still didn't love the track. The final track, Losing My Wife, felt like a very passionate, emotional track from Kehlani. And she had like a raspiness to her voice on this track. It was just so good and nice. And it had acoustic guitar, so it really like got her vocals to really stand out on this track. That was one of the best tracks of the album. But yeah, it was just kind of falling short overall for me. You know, it's like you have a great vocal, you have great production, you just really need to work on that writing. And then I feel like we could get a really incredible project, but this is not it. It just falls short on the lyrics for me. And I even sat there while I was listening to the tracks, reading the lyrics and following it down. So it's not like I wasn't half-ass listening. I was like really diving deep into this project, and it just fell short on the lyrics for me. And that's disappointing for me. But I definitely would listen to more music after this because of what the things that stood out. So like, intrigues me what she's going to continue to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is your introduction to Kehlani for the
Yeah.
most part. Okay,
100%.
cool. So I didn't get to listen to the album. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I listened to it. Been really busy. It was the only thing that we planned to talk about that I didn't get to. But what I can contribute to this conversation is a little background on Kehlani. So, she's originally from California, and she initially rose to fame in a girl group called Pop Life. Do you know them?
No.
Neither do I. So, yeah. With that being said, you commented on her vocals and how great her vocals are, right? Do you know where she studied?
No clue.
Juilliard.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
so
that
if
says
you're a
something, yeah.
vocalist and you're training at Juilliard, you're studying at Juilliard, um, that is a testament to just how talented you are. I think their acceptance rate's like 4%, and um, we're Berkeley students, and Berkeley gets a lot of credit for being like the best school in the music industry, but we're more contemporary music, being like pop music, like what sells. Juilliard excels and is definitely at the forefront of music education when it comes to music. Um, and yeah, so she's incredibly successful. She's inspired by artists like Lauryn Hill and Erykah Badu, Jill Scott. Yeah, so she's a true R&B vocalist. Um, and I think like my introduction to Kehlani were more so like collaborations, like her featuring on tracks. Um, Off the top of my head, I can't remember the names of the songs. Which my apologies to everyone listening. I'm trying to see if I can pull anything up right now. Uh, Here we go, discography. There you go. So yeah, she's never been nominated for a Grammy, which is interesting. Um, but she's pretty acclaimed. She's got a lot of nominations. She's won 2 awards of all the nominations that she's gotten. She's got a very, very successful career, and she's been a true activist and been very vocal about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict that's going on. And she's been very vocal and has spoken against other artists who aren't speaking up about what's going on, especially in Palestine's favor. So, she's got a very caring humanitarian side to her, and it's a big facet of her career for sure.
Let's move on to another album that dropped this week, and that is Gracie Abrams' The Story of Us. I don't know if you guys remember, I've kind of mentioned this track. I think I mentioned
The
her.
Secret of Us.
Yeah, The Secret of Us. I actually mentioned her in the next big pop stars and who I think is going to be up there. She was my side choice that we had. By the way, still thank you for the support on that episode. It's crazy. Um, I know well that's doing. But I was really excited for this album. I was anticipating it. I pre-ordered the record. I think it comes in today, actually, funny enough.
Mhm.
And this was like my most anticipated like listen to this week. Um, and it's sad to say, but this album is also extremely mid for me. Um, it
Oh,
feels,
really?
yeah, it feels like
Oh,
two separate albums to me, completely two separate albums to me. So the first half of this album feels like a Taylor Swift tribute album in the sense of vocals, in the sense of production, even with one of the strongest tracks being the one with Taylor Swift, Us, is still one of the, but it feels not like Gracie Abrams at all to me. Not at all. It feels
you're
like
an
she's,
OG Gracie fan, aren't
yeah,
you?
I when her
Yeah.
album released last year, the song I fell in love with Gracie Abrams with the song "Where Do We Go Now" because what it was this hyper pop sounding vocal with a normal pop production, with her soft vocals coming in there. I really enjoyed it and I loved that track. So I was like wanting more of that. The first half gave me none of that. It sounded nothing like the Gracie Abrams I liked, and it gave the impression that she was still developing her sound, which is okay. A lot of people develop her sound and stuff like that. So when we get to the second half, it felt very, I don't know, it felt very odd to me. It felt very scattered, very different genres. The song that really stood out to me, the one that I love the most off this album is gave you I. I think I wish the album was more like this track, but the keys and the synth production on that with her vocals feeling like the one from Where Do We Go Now, with like
Mhm.
a nice cool guitar lick in the production there. I loved it. I loved that track, but most of the songs felt nothing like that. And when she released her singles like Close to You and Risk, those do not feel like the top of this album at all. They feel like from a different project. And those are, I think, even in the layout of the album, those are at towards the bottom. So I don't know what was happening here, but it felt like it was two artists combining to make one thing, but it wasn't. It's a singular artist that Gracie was. And she was like from the first album, like completely different than what it sounded like. So yeah, I was extremely disappointed and I find it very middling record.
Okay. So I'm genuinely a bit relieved to hear that because I don't have the greatest opinion of the album and I thought I was going to upset you by
Nope.
saying that. So I'm glad we're kind of on the same page here. So let me just get started by saying how I got introduced to Gracie Abrams or just her identity, not necessarily her music. So it was when she was asked to tour with Olivia Rodrigo, and she was an opener. Where I was like, "Oh, who is this?" Like, that's a really good way to anticipate like who's going to do well, is by looking at more successful artists and who's opening up for them. Because, before we had social media, this is how labels got new acts to become successful by putting them in front of people. Putting them in front of an audience would be likely, or more likely to enjoy their music. Most likely, I should say, because we're not comparing it to anything. Um, so with that being said, um, I think I remember checking out her music, and I just wasn't really captivated. Like, I didn't like draw me in. I thought it was like kind of like a bit like cursive singing, and it like I just kind of moved on. But a lot of her success is attributed to having fans in Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo, both of whom asked to have her on their tours, and she opened up for them. She was an opener on the Eras tour, which puts her on a global scale. Some of the biggest crowds to attend. You know, she Taylor Swift is like doubling this capacity of just people outside the stadiums listening. So yeah, it's truly amazing how much respect she's garnered from much more successful people, which I think is also a testament to her talent. Um, so the person that produced this album, his name is Aaron Dressner, who is in a band called so the National, my bad. Um, so Aaron Dressner or Dessner, I should
Phoebe
say,
has worked with
uh,
her with him a lot.
yeah, Taylor Swift has worked with him. Uh, very is a very successful producer and musician, guitarist. Yeah. So he produced the album. So there is that like Phoebe Bridgers-esque like attempt. Um, I just thought a lot of
Wait,
it was.
wait, you can't do that to my girl. None of
I
this
said
album sounds like
attempt.
Phoebe.
I said an
None
attempt.
of it
An
sounds like
attempt.
Phoebe.
The most commercially viable song on this album, which could actually be on pop radio, is "Close to You," which I think was one of the um singles,
Yes,
and
Risk
it's
and Close to You were the singles off the album.
yeah. So "Close to You," who actually wasn't produced by Dessner, it was produced by Sam DeJong. Um, and of that, I think that's one of two songs on the album that Aaron Dessner didn't contribute to. Um, but what stood out to me, like, or what I should say, what didn't really evoke emotion in me is the fact that a lot of this was stagnant. It was just like guitar strumming, nothing really. It was really like copy and paste chords, like the vocals are very relaxed, and of course people love that. That's a genre of people of music and a style of music that people love. But I just didn't find anything particularly amazing about this album. What I will say is that Gracie Abrams is an incredible lyricist. That is definitely evident. Um, and I think like that the way this music is it's designed to put an emphasis on the lyrics. Um, but with that being said, "Free Now" really stood out to me because it was the first song that kind of broke this stagnant vibe of the entire album. Like halfway through the song, it switches up and it's like, "Oh, what happened here?" And we spoke about this like breaking expectations factor, and I feel like that's the only song on the album that really broke the expectations that were developed throughout, you know, the entirety of it. And then it goes into "Close to You," which is different from everything else. So it's just really weird that that's how the album was chosen to end, in my opinion. Um, but another notable mention, "I Love You, I'm Sorry," I thought was a great song. Of everything on the album, going through it initially, what stood out to me was "I Love You, I'm Sorry." Um, Gave You I" stood out to me as well, and you mentioned that, I believe. "Free Now" is a huge standout, and "Close to You" is like, oh, this could be her pop hit. This could be her radio hit. So yeah, with that being said, a lot of people call Gracie a nepo baby.
Yeah, because
Um,
her dad's
her
J.J.
father,
Abrams.
yeah, uh, which yeah. So you're well aware, but just to fill in our listeners who might not know, J.J. Abrams is a famous Hollywood director, who's worked on like the Star Wars franchise and a few other really
Star
notable
Trek.
shows. Thank you. Yeah. Also, he's worked on like sitcoms and whatnot too.
Yeah.
Like Lost, the TV show Lost is another one. So yeah, a very successful career, very established connections. It's worth noting. Uh, so Gracie Abrams attended a school called the Archer School for Girls, which is a very affluent private school for girls. Like the average class size is like 16 kids. The yearly tuition is $53,000, which is college tuition. So if her family is able to dish out that kind of money on like high school education, um, that's also kind of paints a picture of like her surroundings. I'm not saying she's not talented, but she has a very strong foundation. Um, but with that being said, though, Wiley, um, she's very like vocal about the relationship she has with her family, and she says like even though her father is successful throughout her career in music, she has worked hard and she's done her best to avoid ever like letting people know that her dad's in the entertainment industry or that there's some kind of connection. Um, And she says like anything music related with my career, my parents have stayed out of. She hasn't utilized her parents for her own personal gain, and that's what she's saying. So if that's true, um, that's incredibly like commendable. I have a lot of respect for someone like that who like wants to succeed on their own, and they're not trying to, you know, build upon her parents' success. So that's really really something to be said, because a lot of people are gonna be like, "Oh, she's a nepo baby." She definitely, there is definitely some nepotism, and she said something along the lines of like, "Oh, there's a million visible benefits to having like a parent in the entertainment industry and advancing someone's career, and also a million invisible benefits, but I've done my best to separate my career from my parents." So, um, she's kind of like, that's how she's kind of drowned out the voices of like, oh, Gracie Abram nepo baby. So I'm glad that like, because I know you're really excited for this album.
Yeah, it
So
was extremely
yeah,
disappointing. Extremely disappointing. And I've
yeah.
been seeing from
Well,
some Gracie fans that they're disappointed too. Um, because it does not sound like the first album at all. I get it. She's at the beginning of her career. I get that. But still, like, it is, you're trying to become Taylor Swift when you never should have been doing that. You had a great sound that was unique to you that you should have kept down with, which she kind of did here, but not fully. Like, it was lacking, extremely lacking, middling. Like I said, a mid record. Like, it's very
yeah,
middling. It's not awful. It's not
yeah,
great. It's just middle, like middle of the line.
yeah. Definitely not something that's gonna stand out long term.
Definitely no.
People aren't gonna look back
Yeah.
at this album and be like, oh my God, this is like the
Maybe like
best.
Taylor Swift fans might love it because she's on the record. And at the
Oh
same
yeah.
time, like that first part of the album sounds very much like her music. So who knows? They might love it.
And it's also likely that we're going to attract Gracie fans to this video who are
Yeah.
listening to
And
this
I'm a
right now.
fan. I'm not
And
hating. Like,
yeah,
it's just like
yeah,
she could have done better, in my opinion. Like,
yeah. And we could totally be pissing people off, and we might get some heated comments about this, but uh, we respect her creativity and her decisions as an artist. We just think this album fell flat from what it could have been.
mm.
And we'd love to hear what you got to say. Please be kind to us because we cry when we get hate comments.
And speaking of middling, let's move on to Kehlani. So this was an album that you were very excited for. Like, Wiley, this is gonna be big. This is what you were telling me. And I was like, I don't know who this
Kehlani.
is. Not Kehlani. Sorry, Normani. They sound very, very
No, I
familiar.
didn't say it was gonna. I didn't say it was gonna be big.
You said it had potential to be big.
No, no, no. I said that it flopped. That's why I wanted to cover it. Because I was saying like Normani. Okay, yeah. I didn't say it had potential to be big. I just said that Normani is like a highly anticipated artist with a huge fan base,
Mm,
or a fan base. This is her debut album post Fifth Harmony, which is a huge, or is one of the biggest girl groups to ever walk the face of this planet. And she was like second to Camila Cabello in terms of like who is going to be the most successful. We've seen her achieve surmountable success with like Motivation, or the song with Sam Smith, Dancing with a Stranger. So she has like a proven track record of being a very successful
mhm,
pop artist and having hits. But this is our first, real album.
mhm.
The singles flopped. You well, I'm not gonna say your opinion on the album, but you told me like your initial reaction. Um, and it's a shame that she flopped. The album didn't even chart the top 200.
Well, let me put it this
People
way.
thinking, yeah, it's so
Out
sad to see that.
out of the 3 records we have talked about,
Uh-huh.
this is the one I'll be going back to more to listening. By bar none. There were just
I
more
could see that.
tracks per capita that I enjoyed when listening to this
Mhm.
thing that I like genuinely had a good time with. And it also like really sucks to talk negatively about this album in the sense of middling, because hearing that it took a while for her to get this album out because of this awful thing she got put through of both of her parents getting cancer. Like, how do you
Mhm.
deal with that? That feels like so much to go through. So like
Yeah.
taking the time and putting the effort, and it shows here because there is a lot of good tracks on this record, in my opinion. But it does fall short. Like I said, it's still middling, but it's a little bit further than middling. You know, it's like it goes beyond the middling line, even though it still much is. Songs like Tantrums featuring James Blake stood out to me. Take My Time stood out to me. Lights On. Again, vocals are outstanding. Production's kind of on the weaker side on a couple of tracks, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. Like kind of like a lazy approach,
yeah,
right?
but the ones that stood out
pop being
really
big
stood
pop.
out. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, it sucks to say that I didn't really enjoy this record because it's probably very deeply personal. It's probably very extremely deeply personal for her and it being her first record. But I'll say this, and this might get some hate. I feel like there was a more attempt to make a cohesive sound to her name than it was Gracie Abrams did for her album. I feel like there was a more consistent sound throughout this whole album. It might not all worked, but at least it was a album that had a consistent sound that was trying to do something new but unique to her. Also continue the fan base that she already established through other songs. It felt like this was a real first album to release, if that makes sense. Instead of giving you a mosh posh of things that you wrote over the years and say, here you go. Well, you know, like, yeah. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
I could, I have the same opinion as you on the album, like genuinely. Um, it is very unfortunate that she like had all these obstacles that really prevented her from putting time into her career. This album, I think at the end of the day, just blatantly speaking, is Normani needs a new team behind her. She needs a team that's going to be passionate about her music, that's going to really put an effort into the marketing and branding and really establishing her as an artist. Because I don't think she got that. I think if she got the attention that she deserved at the label that she signed to, which I'm not sure what it is, I think this could have done a lot better. I don't know what's going on. Maybe they did give it their all, but I really don't think so. Um, this is somebody who has a song with over 1 billion streams on Spotify. Like, what the hell? Like, seriously, dude.
Well, the
Like,
bottom line,
um,
Benny, is it's hard to make good music. It's impossible. So when you get, like, it's not impossible because people make great music, but it's hard to make a cohesive album that's great. And we're about to talk about one, but, you know, like, it's
but
difficult to make music.
but like also the album's not terrible. Like, it's actually like a decent album, and like it got a lot of good. Like all of the publications that I've read had um such strong opinions of like how great of an album it was. Um, I'm not saying I think the album's great. I just don't think I think it deserved to chart. Honestly, I think there's just like a lack of representation, and
I
you
think they
know,
picked the wrong
it's
singles as well. I think Candy Paint was not a
yeah.
good track. I feel like any of the ones I mentioned could have been better singles, which does have a big thing to it. You know, like Gracie Abrams released 2 singles off her track. Don't put Close to You and Risk at the same time. That's what you're presenting that we're going to get. Put out another, like, from the first part of the album and then put Close to You out. That's what she should have done so we could be prepared what we're getting. But she did not. She gave us the things that we knew that we liked and then basically threw us some shit. Like, and sorry, it's just frustrating because I think she's very talented. That it was just not a good album. It was very middling. But like, same with Normani, like you said, team. Like, I feel like she had a lot to go through. And the fact that she got some songs out that were pretty good, but like, there's also we got to establish that there's a very enormous pressure when you're creating your first record. This is your first sound. This is what you're going to be known for, you know, beyond a
Yeah,
single. Like, what can you produce in a record format?
you're right.
So like the fact that she came out of here as her first record with not being super scathed by saying, okay, this is a decent thing. There's some definitely improvement, but there's some tracks I could really dig on here, is a good place to be as a first artist with your first album. You know, when you look at most artists' first album, besides very few, they're not really great albums. They improve over time. So like, out of all the artists we talked about, even though Kehlani's kind of more established, but like even the records that we established here, like the most example is like Gracie. It's like Gracie's in a not a she's doing really well, but like she's in a worser place when people consider her records now than Normani is. Normani like gave us a sound that we knew, improved on it, gave us some good tracks, so we know what we're getting. You know, like I want to listen to when I hear that name, I'm gonna know who it is. I'm gonna know what we're getting. So like, yeah, like she just needs to improve on it. But this is her first album. Like, you know, like it's her first album. I'm not holding any grudges. This is not preventing me to continue to listen to her by any means. But like, I'm excited to see what she does next. But
Yeah. To
maybe,
add on to
yeah,
this too,
yeah.
like I just Googled her. The first thing that comes up is a Yahoo article, and it says Normani worried she missed her moment as a solo artist. So like she, she sees what's going on too, and it's just sad, you know.
Well, she had something
Um,
that no one could predict, and no one probably has. Like a lot of people probably have not dealt with what she has with two parents getting diagnosed with cancer, and then having to create an album that's your first album of your career. That is enormous pressure that most artists have never had to go through. So like when the world's on you and you have to be creative is one of the most difficult things you can do as a human being, because you have to be in good mood, good spirits, inspired to create. So when you have the world against you and pain and having to create a record when a genre is not really established for being sad music, must be an incredible difficult task that I can never do. I can never do that. I'm not musically inclined, but like with anything, making a video when my life is shit is impossible. It's an impossible
you're right.
task. So like,
It's hard to find
yeah,
any like sense of inspiration or like a will to do it, you
yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yeah. I gotta say, I got to see Fifth Harmony live. They opened up for Hot Shell Ray back in like
Oh my God, that
2020,
band. That brings me back.
2014. Yeah, so they opened for Hot Shell Ray, and I was in front. I was like up against a barricade. It was a very small venue in Brooklyn. And
That's the people
I
that,
remember Fifth Harmony was like most of the crowd. Like they were just starting their careers, and it was like right before the VMAs. It was like a VMA pre-show or something. Um, and they had such crazy fans. Like everybody was there for Fifth Harmony. It was crazy. Um, not everybody. There were a lot of Hot Shell Ray
yeah.
fans too, but and I remember when we were there, I had like my iPhone 4S at the time, and I was like taking photos or whatever, and I was screaming at Camila Cabello. I was like deathcore screaming like I love you, like on top of my lungs. And then Camila was like giving me dirty looks, and then Normani came over to me and took my phone and took a selfie like this. So I wonder if I can find it anywhere. I have the phone, but I need to like jailbreak it because I forgot the password. But the photo lives on there somewhere. I'll show it to you at some point.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I thought Normani was like then was very sweet, and like she was very engaging with the fans, like, I think she was like the most outgoing to the fans. Like she wanted to like have moments where she was connecting with people in the crowd, which I thought was sweet. And I think she's a good person. Like based off what I can see and what I've heard in the industry, like people have respect for her. So let's just hope, moving forward that, she's more on the, or not her, but hopefully like, all the stars align and she's able to put out a record that's going to get the success that she deserves as an artist.
Okay. Can we move on to the best album of the year, Benny? And I said it. This album has become my number one of the year, beating Billy, Dua Lipa, Ariana Grande. And if you asked me before this came out, would never would have guessed it. Yeah.
I'm so surprised, honestly.
Because this is not my normal genre of music. So like when you have a good record, you can put anyone onto it. And that's the bottom line. I will say when you throw out the word masterpiece quite often, I don't. This album is as close as you can get to a masterpiece that there is.
Yeah, I don't throw it out often, I would say. I've only
you throw it out. You threw it out pretty
albums.
recently.
Yeah.
But I don't use it often.
Right.
But this album, the marketing campaign, it is incredible. I can listen to every one of these tracks. There's not one I dislike, but like I love this album. Apple is my favorite track. And usually when I like a track a lot from like an album that's like critically acclaimed, usually people don't like that track. They're like, that's the weakest one. You know, a lot of people say that so I noticed that in my opinion. But like there was an interview that I saw, Charli was like, what do you think is the most underrated track on your album? And she's like, definitely Apple. Apple represents the album as a whole. I'm like, yes, finally some representation for a song I really like. So Apple's my favorite, but like every one of these tracks are catchy. The production does something new but consistent. You know, the lyrics are incredible. You want to sing along. Like Sympathy of a Knife has been on repeat all the time. Rewind. It is a perfect record. It is so good. And to think that Charli has had like so much like some hate in the past because of her music, and sometimes like she's been popular, of course, but like she just kind of had some hate. Kind of like the same with Lorde did, which they just dropped a single remix, which was really good.
Yeah, they've ended their
They
feud.
squashed the
they're saying.
beef. Allegedly, there
Yeah.
was a beef. Who knows? But
We don't know.
yeah. So like this album is so good. And usually when something's so perfect, it's hard to articulate how you feel about it because I just love it so deeply. But like if I just take the Apple song, for example, I love the metaphor of the apple in it, but like I forgot the song.
What's the metaphor exactly?
Well, it's like it's talking about apples, you know, like apples are rotten to a core, or an apple has fall down, you know, kind of fall down from stardom, or like wanting to
Oh, okay.
move away and things like that is the representation. Or like an apple
Uh-huh.
can be so many different colors and shades, you know, like that's like a lyric of it. But like going from like something that's like that, or Rewind, or talk that are just like dancey kind of good songs, to go from basically a tribute song to Sophie, who sadly passed away, and it's so heart-wrenching and so deep, but the production's so like exciting and stuff like that. So to have the lyricism and the passion in the
Wait.
production.
Sophie, as in like
Yeah, the artist.
pop artist Sophie?
Yes, she died falling off a roof, and that one of the songs off the album was a tribute to her. Basically saying that she tried to call Charli, and Charli was like didn't pick up, and she regrets it and stuff like that. It's really deeply sad and moving. It's just incredible. This album goes to amazing lengths. It is by far the best album that has released this year. Sorry, Beyonce, but you have been dethroned, in my opinion. BRAT is just a masterpiece.
Cool. Well, so I really appreciate how passionate you are about this album. I don't think it's the best album of the year.
Well, this
think
is my
the
opinion.
production.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on my end, I don't think it's the best album of the year. I think so. I think the hyper pop genre, which is, spends about like, I don't know, like 10 to 15 years, let's say, from here to the past, where this like British genre has been growing. It's kind of like a dance music genre, and it's, comprised of a lot of sounds and noise even, and like lots of like really hyper in front of you music, which um this is. And earlier I mentioned how there was a producer who produced the album, and Charli only produced two of the songs. So at the end of the day, even though this is a Charli XCX album, this is very much an AG Cook album, or Alexander Guy Cook album.
You can say that with
Being that
any
this is
producer, though. Like, I don't think that's a dig towards the album.
well, not. I mean, no, it's not a dig at all. I'm just saying, like, I'm just putting respect on his name. So, like, not any album, because like this is
That's
a
like saying
production.
that's like saying Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff. Like that's like the same exact
No,
thing.
it's I disagree, because Taylor Swift is also a musician, and she's, also working on the actual composition, whereas a lot of these songs are just production based. And AG Cook, and the reason why I bring this up is that AG Cook is coined as someone who has paved the way for hyperpop music. He's like one of the founding fathers of hyperpop music. Um, he's collaborated with artists like Sophie, for example. And he is just one of the, like I said, the founding fathers of hyperpop music. So she has somebody who is at the very forefront and who like is kind of crafted single-handedly, like was a huge contribution to crafting this genre. Um, Now Charlie XCX has been hyperpop. This isn't like, like this isn't her entry into hyperpop. But what I think is really particularly amazing about this album is that she was able to blend elements of house music and hyperpop. And this opens it up to so many more people. Um, and I think it's going to be loved, not necessarily in the US market. I just don't see it, and I could be wrong. You know what I mean? Like
I'm telling
like
you,
why
I have
like
seen
Wiley.
so much support for this album. It is insane.
Well, yeah, and I haven't seen anything bad about it. I've seen support for other albums too, but like what I'm saying is that with this album specifically, I don't think it's going to perform well or as well in the US as it's going to in the rest of the world. I see this being like a very um commercially successful album in Europe, in Africa, in South America. I don't see it doing as well here, just because this kind of music, and you made a comment to me, Wiley, that this music is going to change the industry. Like you texted me that,
I say that because
and
that's what great albums
yeah,
do. They change the industry. And let me, because if you bring that up, I got to comment. I got to make a comment back to that.
yeah, yeah, go, of
I
course.
think it's different and how it's going to change the industry because when people talk about great music and when there are best albums of the like in the entire world, like the top 100, what every one of those albums and a lot of people that make them, they're always like, what did it change for the industry is what people usually go by. So like if that is what we're taking as what are considered the best albums that take a genre or whatever or change it, then Brat does that in a way, like you said, combining two different genres, but also to take a genre that is known for you just to be in the club and play, in a sense, EDM in a way, to have lyrics that get emotional, that are deep and thoughtful, to have ones that are just what you know, but also have a deep lyricism to them, to have a track
Uh-huh.
about a friend passing away and having regrets, but having the beats of a like a, of a hyper pop song, to have
Uh-huh.
the strong vocals of Charli within this album, to also having those effects that you know for this genre as well. So it's taking what you know about a genre, changing it, and opening up a world to other artists that come in the future. That is what's incredible about this
Or
album.
bringing light to artists or the artists that have
Yes.
paved the way,
Yeah.
like Sophie, for
Yeah.
example.
And Sophie, literally, she makes
So
a song about Sophie and how inspirational she was, basically a guiding light for Charli. Like,
mhm.
she's not trying to
and
claim this spot, you
and the
know?
hyper pop genre in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, but also the guy A.G. Cook worked with Sophie. Like
Yeah.
he very much contributed to Sophie's career just as much as he is Charlie's.
Mhm.
So with that being said, I think also I want to give credit to A.G. Cook because again, like he is the mastermind behind this masterpiece that you're calling it a masterpiece, so I'm gonna call it a
It
masterpiece too.
is. It is. And most of
Um,
the world thinks
so
so too.
like I actually like I'm not gonna so like that's not necessarily true that the
Oh
most of
my
the world
God.
thinks so
What were
too.
you just saying at the beginning of this podcast? You were saying charts don't matter, and you're comparing the
No,
charts right now.
no, I'm not comparing the charts. It's charting very well, but I'm saying is a lot of people. There's a lot of like a lot of people when it comes to hyper pop music, this genre in general, and even this album, it's like, oh, a lot of it sounds the same. A lot of it just sounds like
But that's
noise.
what's so good
And to
about
a
it.
lot,
None of it sounds the same. Every track is different. Every
no,
single
that's
track
what
is
I'm
different.
saying. Like it, there a lot of people. It does have a lot of people would say that this sounds the same. Like
Then they're
this is
dumb.
what I'm
I'm
getting at.
sorry, but you're
They're
dumb if you think
I-
that.
as someone who is a musician and has an extensive background in music theory and production, like this is an incredible album, but what I'm saying is that this isn't for everyone, this sound. I think A.G. Cook, who has worked with artists like Beyonce and Lady Gaga, and he's helped craft major sounds for house music and dance music. Um, this is the dance album of the year. This
It's
is
the album of the year.
yeah.
It's the album of the year.
I
You're putting it in this category of just dance. It's more than that.
it's
That's what
because
extraordinary.
if we're
Oh,
I don't want to compare it to other things. People have their own opinions and their own taste, and you love this album and you think it's the best album of the year, and a lot of people would agree with you. Um, I personally don't think it's the best album of the year.
what would you say?
Um,
Beyonce would be your answer?
uh, no, I don't want to like put a label on best, but Beyonce definitely has one of the most critically acclaimed albums of the year, and like in terms of like musicality and just much like how much mastered work is in Beyonce's album. I would put it at like one of the best albums released this year, in my opinion. I'm just not labeling it as the best album of the year because best is subjective. So I think what I am confident in saying is that this is the best dance album of the year. That I will say. Within its niche, I think this is as good as it gets. I think A.G. Cook really crafted his sound in this album. Um, and I just like, you know, I want to give respect due to all the hyper pop artists that also like paved the way for this, because like this isn't just like Charlie XCX. This is a representation of a whole genre that many people don't know about, you know? So like you have someone like Charlie who's putting it on such a huge scale, and I'm really excited to see how the world is going to react to this album moving forward and where it's going to go. But like I said, I don't think it's going to be as well received in the States on a grand scale, but like everywhere else worldwide, I think it's going to perform incredibly well, so well. Um, yeah, and the production is incredible, truly. So, um, yeah,
But I want to ask you, Benny, before we get into our last segment, like,
sure.
what is your favorite track of this? You didn't really speak on that. Like, what is your favorite track from the album? Which one stood
I don't
out?
have a favorite. I don't have a favorite track. I can't do that. Um, I
So you
could.
like them all? Like,
So so I wouldn't say I like them all. I think
but that's
I would
confusing to me.
say it's girl so confusing. God. um, I that was a reference to the album, by the way, guys. Uh, I I guess going through it, what has stood out to me. You didn't mention this track, but Everything Is Romantic really stands out. It's
That's
like
one of
a
my least
standout track
favorites. I like it, but
in
it's
the
one of my least
entire
favorites.
album. And I think it was strategically placed as like the very like center song of the album because it kind of stands out above everything else. Um, and I think like Von Dutch is a great song, and
That
that
was a
was kind of
single.
like the precursor to Everything Is Romantic on the album. Um,
That was also a single.
36 360 was also a single too.
Yeah, love that track.
Um, but yeah, did you get to go to um the deluxe edition? Did you get to listen to those
Yeah, I
songs?
love every song that's released, even the remixes. Guess is blowing up on TikTok. I love that track.
Mhm.
Um,
I could see that.
and that one's really good. It's like it's been blowing up because people have been like they've been taking it apart, like talking about the underwear and then making videos on it. It's been great. I love that. I love the support that TikTok has been giving Charlie in this album. I love it so
Mhm.
much. It's so good.
Um, may I ask what, because I think you probably have some clear favorites here. I know you mentioned Apple.
Yeah.
Um, like what, give me your
Okay.
top three tracks because you've
Top
been loving this
three?
album. I'd
That's
just love to
difficult.
hear.
Oh my god.
How
Top
about
three.
a top five
Okay,
if
easy.
that's
Yeah.
too
Okay.
okay.
Apple number one. So I'm gonna just put that one down. Then I would put Talk Talk. then Sympathy of a Knife, Back to Back, and then oh god, I've been really digging Von Dutch quite a bit recently, so I have to say those 5. But it could change every day. Like there's so many good tracks; it's actually difficult for me to pick. Um, like I like,
Now,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Finish what you're saying, and then I can follow up.
Um, this feels like an album I can go back to at any point in the year and have a new
Mhm.
top 5 because every track is great. So it's just like whatever is spawning at the moment. There's only been one album I've ever really done that with, and that is Clairo's first album, Immunity. Like I will listen to that album and have 5 tracks, then come back around and then have 5 different tracks I'm listening to. And I feel like Brat is going to be one of those albums for me that does that same thing. So
Okay. Yeah, dude. So I'm just curious. So, you've been a Charlie XCX fan, like
no, I was
you
not.
are a fan.
I was not.
Okay, so you just listened to this album because it was
New and coming
like,
out and to stay in the know.
okay, so like it was just like an anticipated album, and you were like, oh,
Yeah.
let me just give this a
Yeah.
listen.
So it blew me away.
Interesting.
Like
So,
I'm going to go back and listen to her
this
discography.
was this your introduction to hyperpop, or did
N-
you ever like really listen to like hyperpop albums and like from start to
I would
finish like
say I've
this one?
heard singles of hyperpop, but never really done a deep dive in the sense of like listening to like an album of hyperpop.
Okay. So my introduction to hyperpop, I guess, might have been maybe 100 Gex. Um, but there's a lot of artists who like have paved the way. And like Easy Fun, who also AG Cook has worked with, Sophie, um, Food House, trying to think. I mentioned the 100 Gex already, and then you have like other artists who are like kind of bringing it to the spotlight. Like for example, Kim Petras, who dabbles in hyperpop, and there's a lot of hyperpop elements, in her music. Osquin, who I don't know what's going on with that. Like the music's been like removed off Spotify. Uh, there's like maybe I don't know what's going on.
Some artists do that. They
But
don't want it on
yeah,
Spotify.
and then there's a whole like underground and like really tight knit community of hyperpop artists, especially like in the London music scene. Um, for example, there's one artist, KK Butterfly 27XX, who a dear friend of mine, incredibly talented, who kind of like has gotten into meme culture, but KK Butterfly often coins Charlie XCX as one of their um, musical inspirations, and it's very evident in the music. But um, yeah, I think for everybody watching, if you're really digging this new Charlie album, um, really like just i- if you want like more music that's similar to it, really look into the artists that have paved the way for this album to really get to where it is right now, and maybe look at AJ Cook's production discography and go check out other artists that he's worked with, for example Sophie. And I love that there was like a honor being paid towards Sophie in this album, and I definitely think that's being channeled through the music.
Well, they were friends, so
Yeah. So yeah, really, really dope, Wiley. I'm really, really happy to see that you're passionate about this album. And I know that we've been talking for quite some time. I think we're pushing an hour and a half now.
yep.
With that being said, we got to wrap up this podcast because people got time. They got to go do other things.
But first, we have to get to
Uh,
our this week's
we got to
orange juice.
Wiley, what's your first pick?
So like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I've been really digging the band Lemon Twigs quite a bit. And I want to show a song that's like deeply emotional for me. And I rarely say this, but usually when I'm listening to so much music or a movie and then I watch something that like reinvigorates my love of it, where I'm not burnt out, is very rare.
Mhm.
But but once that happens, it's extremely powerful. So here is What Happens to a Heart by Lemon Twigs.
So this is a great segue into the next song. The Lemon Twigs are actually touring with Lake Street Dive, who just released an album yesterday or Thursday night. And since we didn't get to talk about the album, I'm gonna cover it now. I didn't get a chance to listen to it, unfortunately, but I'm a big fan. And just taking a quick look at the album here, it looks like Better Not Tell You is one of the most played songs off it. So let's go with it. This is Better Not Tell You by Lake Street Dive.
Okay, so you know me in the Orange Juice segment, I like to bring some different genres. So today I'm doing a drastically different genre for us, and it's a country song. But it's not a current country song. This is from the 90s, from a kind of one-hit wonder type of artist named Radney Foster. So this is Louisiana Blues.
Those muddy bayous run just as black.
And we gotta just like take a moment, like if you're gonna show the album cover of this single or song, this guy's fit is on point. How do I get this suit? Oh my gosh. Well, I got the pleasure of closing out today's Orange Juice segment. And since we were on the topic of covering albums today that have been released, one of my favorite bands of all time, Lawrence, just released their new album on Thursday night, along with the bulk of everything else here. And yeah, I didn't get to listen to the entire thing, but I gave it an initial listen, got to check out the first few tracks. And the first song is such a hard hitter. So that's what I'm going to show you guys today.
And don't forget, Benny, don't forget to tell the audience, freshies, watch out for a solo Benny video covering this album.
Oh, yeah. On Monday, I'm going to go and do a quick deep dive on Lawrence. And when I say deep dive, just go into their backstory and whatnot. But I'm going to focus on listening to this album and give you my first raw impression, aside from this one song, which I've been listening to. So anyways, guys, this is What You Want by Lawrence.
Tell me what you need.
So that has been this week's Orange Juice, a good variety of music. If you guys have not listened to the albums that we covered, definitely come back to the discussion. Maybe you have some thoughts too. But also, if you guys have not seen the channel, a ton of content, extra content has been coming out. Short form content, like shorts, have been on all social medias. Make sure to follow the Instagram at the Fresh Record Pod. Also, one thing that we did not mention, so we had to change our podcast feed to be able to have access to have video on Spotify. So if you guys did follow that, make sure to go re-and-follow the Fresh Record because that will not get to you anymore on Spotify or Apple. So keep that in mind. Also, if you guys have not been able to catch the full episode, we are starting to clip out segments so you guys can watch that in short form so you can get your info very quick. So a ton of stuff happening for the Fresh Record. Again, Benny's making a solo video. I don't have one planned as of now, but I am going to be doing original content on short form content. So very quick stuff, covering some songs that I want to talk about or things like that. So keep that in mind. A ton happening for the Fresh Record.
Before we go,
yeah.
please make sure to like, subscribe, and join in on the conversation in the comments. Give us suggestions if you want us to listen to music or like check out artists that you like. This is very much community based, and we love hearing feedback. Yeah, so hop on in, and Wiley, where can everyone find you on socials?
You can follow me at Wiley K Todd on all social medias, and I know I keep on saying it, but I'm recording the tier list video this week. I promise. I'm
Sick.
done with school. It is getting recorded and then going to the editing process. So hopefully in the next couple episodes, I can announce that you guys can finally watch that video. But also, before we start the Fresh Record, I did original content on like TikTok and stuff like that. I'm going to get back to that. I have so many ideas. I want to get back to that grind. So yeah, just make sure to follow me and you'll get info about all that stuff happening, because my life is changing because freaking college has ended. So I'm in the real life now. So make sure to do those things. Benny, where can they find you?
You can find me at Benny Camella. If you don't know how to spell it, you can find it in the description, or if you're listening to us on some kind of podcast streaming platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, or any obscure thing that I don't even know the name of, get it there. I'm on just about everything, and yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this solo project. It's my first one with the Fresh Record channel, and so we'll see how it's good to go.
And everybody, to prepare for next week, if you guys want to check out the new Kabila, can you say it? Camila Cabello.
Yeah,
Her album
Yeah.
drops next week.
Yeah.
We are going to be covering that. There might be some other albums, but just keep in mind that is the main project we're going to be covering next week. So if you want to listen to it before the episode, please do. And we'll see you guys next time on The Fresh Record. Goodbye.